Quick Play Hack came out this weekend, this time featuring 6v6 dynamic queue, which means the matchmaker will try to put you in a 2-2-2 role lock, but if there's not enough players playing tank, they will put you in a 1-3-2 role lock, where the DPS can switch to tank for a maximum of 2 tanks. So its goal will be 2-2-2, but if the queue times get too long, then it'll be 1-3-2 for both teams. This mode got its own balance changes as well. They reduced the tank's defensive cooldowns to help improve their gameplay flow, while nerfing self-sustaining sub-roles and the combat healing reduction from 30% to 15%, which I think is a good change. Honestly, this is the first time in a long time where it feels like Blizzard is taking 6v6 seriously and giving it its own patch. I can't remember the last time that 6v6 got this many balance changes, and I think it's overdue. I think this is stuff that they should have been testing for the past 2 years if they actually wanted to take 6v6 seriously. And honestly, they shouldn't have even bothered testing with the 1-3-2 2 weeks ago. This is how the mode should have always been if they wanted to somewhat deviate from the 2-2-2 role lock to help improve queue times. I've played about 6 matches so far, and of the 2 DPS games I played, one of them switched to the dynamic queue. So with that, I just locked tank right away, since tank is my best role, so I'm going to play it, and we just ran through the enemy team. I mean, we ran 2 tanks longer than they did, and when you have 2 tanks, you're just at an advantage, and this is something that is not as much of a problem as it was 2 weeks ago, but it is still a problem, and again, you run into that issue of competitive integrity inside of a mode like this, which is why I think we need a season just dedicated to 6v6, either dynamic queue, which I think we could try a season of it and see how it works out inside of competitive, because really that's the only way you're going to be able to get true results and see what the pain points of this mode are going to be, of this queue system. And I'm not even saying replace 5v5, just replace it with a normal open queue and just get the results that way, because it's not necessarily the amount of players that are logging into the mode, it's what those players are queuing up for. And I just don't see this mode replacing 5v5. Could it coexist with 5v5? Yeah, sure, but is that something that Blizzard wants to do? Is Blizzard looking to coexist 5v5 and 6v6 together, or are they looking to just switch to one format at the end of all this testing? That's what I'm really curious on. Because each of these modes are going to need separate balancing. It's possible, it's doable, but is 5v5 ever going to take a back seat to 6v6? Is the whole pro scene ever going to switch back to 6v6? And I just can't see a future where that happens right now. Maybe it's because they're still testing 6v6. Maybe it's because if they want 6v6 to come back, they want it to be perfect this time. They want it to be better than last time. They don't want to have the same mistakes as last time. But I'm just worried about competitive integrity if you don't have a solid 2-2-2 role lock. Take me for example. I'm a plat DPS player, but a master's tank. So what happens when I queue damage and I'm thrown into a dynamic queue? I mean, the smart thing would be to lock tank right away. The tank is my best role. But now you have a master's tank in a lobby with plat players. And maybe on the other team, the DPS only have gold tanks. So you have potentially a gold tank and a master's tank facing off against each other. And this could happen in high ranks either. Imagine you're a GM DPS but a master's tank, and that's what your whole team consists of. That tank is going to be struggling, especially if they have their DPS that have a GM equivalent tank. And I feel like that aspect of this mode is what's going to hold it back, and what's going to hold back any form that deviates from the 2-2-2 queue. Because I just don't see a world where dynamic queue can work with the current ranking system. You'd probably need a whole new ranking system for this mode to even work inside of competitive. Because would it be fair if you have 3 DPS players on your team that don't play tank at all, while on the other team they have 3 DPS players who can play tank decently and maybe 1 DPS player that could play tank really well? The quality of the matches will suffer. I mean, imagine queuing tank and you have no DPS that know how to play tank. You're solo tank again with 5 other people on your team, and you're facing off against 2 tanks. I'm not saying it's impossible for the team with only 1 tank to win. It is possible. It's just the DPS have to pick up so much slack, and that 1 tank has to be on top of his game, where it just puts them at a disadvantage. And for the matchmaker for competitive, where they change it upwards, like they're going to try to match the DPS tank ranks to the other DPS tank ranks, I mean, I think that's possible, but I feel like that's a lot of work internally to do. And a system like that could also increase queue times to the point where you might as well just wait for a second tank player to load in. As much problems as I have with dynamic queue and with anything that isn't a 2-2-2 role lock for 6v6, I am glad that Blizzard is continuously trying new things. I'm glad that there's actually separate balance changes for this game mode, for this version of 6v6, because ultimately 6v6 is going to need its own hero patches. And if they want to continue to test out 6v6, we're going to need more and more separate patch notes for 6v6, especially for tanks and supports. DPS you could probably leave alone for the most part. I don't really have a horse in the race for 5v5 or 6v6, but I have been finding myself getting burned out of 6v6 way quicker than in 5v5. Then again, 6v6 is only available in unranked. At least these quick play hacked events are, obviously quick play hacked. And I just don't find myself having fun inside of quick play as much as I do when I'm playing competitive. So that might be the issue and why I'm not enjoying these 6v6 events as much as I guess I should be. I want to give it a fair shot. I do want to give it a fair chance. And I think the best way we go about that for all players, not just myself, because I feel like a lot of people are in this camp, is that we take half a season, we do a full season where we switch the 6v6 open queue to a 6v6 dynamic queue or a 6v6 222 queue with its own balance changes, its own tweaks, and we see how fun the mode is then and go from there. I understand that there's a 6v6 open queue in competitive right now, but I feel like that mode is just so unserious almost. Like you just need this dynamic queue or a roll lock just to have some kind of stability inside of that mode. And of course the most important part is having actual 6v6 balance changes. With the stadium team now moving on to other projects, I can almost guarantee you that's what they're working on, and there's going to be some kind of big 6v6 playtest either at the end of the year or at the beginning of next year, and maybe there will even be an announcement at BlizzCon about it. I wouldn't be too surprised if there was. But if I had to pick one right now of what I'd rather play 5v5 roll lock than I would 6v6 dynamic queue. That's just how my opinion is right now. My mind is more than open to being changed, and I hope that we see a full 6v6 mode done properly with the proper roll locks and the proper balance changes, while of course trying to fix the queue times. But that's just where I stand right now. We'll see how things play out throughout the year, throughout next year, and we'll see if Blizzard does make a choice if they want to stick to a certain format and kind of just ignore the other format or moved on from the other format. If that be 5v5 gets favorited and 6v6, just stop talking about it, we're going to get rid of it. Or 6v6 is favorited, we're going to move away from 5v5 and eventually get rid of it, so that way our main balance can just focus on that one mode and not have to be split in between two modes. But who knows, they might keep both modes active because both formats are very popular. 5v5 is very popular. A lot of people are in this copium state that nobody enjoys 5v5 and they only play it because it's the main mode. But people do genuinely love the mode. You just hear a lot of these YouTubers, a lot of these streamers just say how much 5v5 sucks and that 6v6 is better. And it's like they can't fathom that people actually genuinely enjoy 5v5. And then they go out of their way to insult them. I feel like the 6v6 player base is just way more vocal, and that's why we hear it a lot more than the 5v5 player base, because the 5v5 player base has no reason to talk, the 6v6 player base does. And then of course you have a lot of people who genuinely enjoy 6v6 more than 5v5, but I also feel like a lot of people like a different format like 6v6 is because they've been playing on 5v5 for years now, and 6v6 is a change of pace. I think that's what happened with a lot of streamers when they were clowning on 6v6 being open queue, and now all of a sudden starting this year there's like this huge shift towards competitive 6v6 about people saying how much more fun it is. And I think there's that conception about it because it's just a new mode that they haven't played in a while, and it's still relatively new to the game compared to 5v5. Maybe they got burned out of 5v5 and 6v6 was just that new fresh experience that got them back into the game and is the reason they're having fun again. Not necessarily because it's better, but because it's something new and refreshing to play. Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on the new quick play hack. Do you think 6v6 could actually work in this mode, or do you think 222 roll lock is just a must? It has to be that way. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next one.